At exactly 11:42 p.m. last Tuesday, the iron gates of Kensington Palace were abruptly locked down. No press, no official schedule, just three blacked-out Range Rovers and a senior Crown courier clutching a sealed, lead-lined briefcase. Inside that briefcase was Emergency Order 44, a document so legally devastating it didn't just strip Prince Harry of his remaining dignities. It entirely erased his financial foothold in the royal estate. We now have verified reports that a senior Sussex loyalist, a mole embedded deep within the palace walls, was physically escorted off the premises by armed detail, their security pass confiscated on the spot. Why? Because the monarchy was hemorrhaging secrets, and millions of pounds of sovereign assets were suddenly at risk of being quietly funneled to Montecito. But what the public doesn't know is who signed the order. It wasn't King Charles. Before we expose the name at the bottom of that devastating warrant and reveal the contents of the 150-page dossier that brought the Sussexes to their knees, I need you to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel right now. We are exposing royal secrets the mainstream media is too terrified to touch, and your subscription ensures you won't miss the explosive updates to this ongoing constitutional crisis. To understand the sheer violence of this constitutional severance, we have to rewind exactly 3 months and 14 days. While the world watched the Duke and Duchess of Sussex smile for the cameras at their latest sun-drenched Hollywood gala, projecting an image of carefree, philanthropic royalty, a ruthless shadow war was being waged in the legal back-channels of Delaware and London. This is the ultimate archetypal war of our modern era, the prodigal son attempting to outsmart an ancient, unyielding institution, battling a future king sworn by blood and duty to protect a 1,000-year bloodline from internal decay. In mid-April, highly classified red flags were triggered deep within the Crown Estate's Financial Oversight Committee. This wasn't a standard accounting error. Hidden shell companies, allegedly linked to top-tier Sussex associates, were attempting to quietly trademark the term royal in specialized, highly lucrative global markets. It was a calculated, brazen maneuver, a direct and unforgivable violation of the foundational 2020 Sandringham Summit Agreement that explicitly forbade the commercialization of their royal status. The sheer audacity of this intellectual property grab sent shockwaves through the marbled corridors of Buckingham Palace. This was a covert operation designed to build a shadow monarchy, monetizing the 1,000-year history of the British Crown through back-alley corporate entities registered in tax havens. Forensic accountants working for the sovereign grant discovered a labyrinth of offshore trusts meticulously layered to obscure the true beneficiaries. IP addresses originating from Beverly Hills PR firms were tracking directly to encrypted servers in the Cayman Islands, all funneling data toward a master plan to launch a billion-dollar global lifestyle empire heavily reliant on the implied, yet legally forbidden, endorsement of the British Crown. The monarchy realized they were not merely dealing with a disgruntled family member writing tell-all memoirs. They were facing a highly sophisticated corporate siege, designed to siphon the very essence of the royal brand. Enter the Crown Sovereign Protection Memorandum. This wasn't a tabloid rumor whispered by unnamed sources. This was a massive, impenetrable, 150-page dossier, compiled over 6 grueling months by MI5 domestic intelligence liaisons and the elite, ruthless, constitutional lawyers at Farrer & Co. We have managed to uncover the staggering scope of this dossier. It bypasses standard royal protocols and directly invokes a deeply dormant clause from the Letters Patent of 1917, ruthlessly combining it with the Sovereign Grant Act of 2011, Section 4, subparagraph B. This impenetrable wall of legal jargon translates to one terrifying, undeniable reality for Harry: the absolute and irrevocable revocation of all latent sovereign immunities and subsidiary stipends. In plain English, the financial IV drip was being violently ripped out of his arm. The dossier was a masterpiece of legal destruction. It detailed, with terrifying precision, compromised IP addresses, encrypted wire transfers, and clandestine midnight meetings designed to monetize the Crown's image without palace consent. It laid bare a sprawling network of enablers, fixers, and Hollywood executives who believed the British monarchy was simply a distressed asset ripe for a corporate hostile takeover. The Crown Sovereign Protection Memorandum didn't just outline financial transgressions. It methodically dismantled the Sussex's remaining security infrastructure. It exposed how private security contractors in California were allegedly utilizing back-channel contacts within British intelligence to secure unauthorized threat assessments, essentially piggybacking on taxpayer-funded resources while publicly declaring financial independence. Page after page of redacted MI5 surveillance logs painted a damning picture of a rival court attempting to establish diplomatic immunity and state-level protection on foreign soil, a direct violation of international protocol that threatened to spark a diplomatic incident with the United States State Department. The lawyers at Farrer & Co. left absolutely no stone unturned. They drafted injunctions so severe that any bank, corporate entity, or media conglomerate attempting to finalize contracts utilizing the disputed royal trademarks would be subject to immediate, crippling litigation from the Crown estate. This was a scorched earth legal strategy, designed not just to punish, but to financially quarantine Montecito. The sheer weight of the evidence presented in the thick, red leather-bound folder was undeniable. It was an avalanche of concrete proof that forced the ultimate confrontation within the darkest, most private corners of the royal household, setting the stage for a clash that would change the line of succession forever. Our most trusted palace insiders have provided a chilling, minute-by-minute account of the closed-door meeting that took place deep within the king's private study, an event that will undoubtedly be recorded as the most consequential royal confrontation of the modern era. The atmosphere inside the dimly lit, oak-panelled room was described as utterly suffocating. Heavy velvet drapes were drawn tight against the London rain, and the only sound penetrating the oppressive silence was the rhythmic, relentless ticking of an antique grandfather clock. King Charles sat frozen behind his massive mahogany desk, his knuckles turning a stark, bloodless white as he gripped the carved arms of his chair. Spread out before him was the unredacted Crown Sovereign Protection Memorandum, its pages illuminating a betrayal so profound it defied comprehension. The monarch was visibly paralyzed by the ultimate father's dilemma. The man who had spent a lifetime waiting to inherit the throne was now crumbling under its absolute weight, desperate to find a loophole, a softer landing, any possible avenue to protect his exiled second son from the annihilating force of the British state machinery. But Prince William was a completely different story. The Prince of Wales did not see a misguided brother. He saw a hostile corporate entity actively attempting to dismantle his future kingdom. Witnesses stationed just outside the heavy double doors reported hearing the echoing footsteps of a man pacing like a caged predator. William moved across the Persian rugs with a terrifying kinetic energy, his jaw locked so tightly the muscles twitched under his skin. Bloodshot veins were visibly pulsing at his temples, a physical manifestation of a rage that had been brewing for years. He was no longer the aggrieved sibling playing a media-managed game of tit-for-tat. He was the ruthless, calculating heir apparent, fully embracing the darkest, most draconian powers of the institution he was born to lead. William understood what his father was too emotionally compromised to accept. The Montecito's shadow monarchy wasn't just a PR nuisance, it was an existential threat. If the Sussexes were allowed to successfully franchise the royal aura through Delaware shell companies, the thousand-year mystique of the crown would be permanently reduced to a cheap, exploitative lifestyle brand. As Charles hesitated, murmuring fragmented sentences about diplomatic backchannels and temporary asset freezes, William intercepted the weakness with brutal precision. He systematically dismantled his father's lingering hopes for reconciliation, laying out exactly how the Sussex PR machine in California would weaponize any half measure, spinning a temporary freeze into a narrative of royal vindictiveness while continuing to quietly siphon international trademarks. The heir demanded absolute, unyielding severance. The tension in the room twisted into something visceral and dangerous. It was a clash of two distinct eras of monarchy. The king's desperate desire for a modernized, emotional compromise, colliding head-on with the prince's realization that only medieval, absolute destruction could save the bloodline. When Charles closed his eyes, unable to bring himself to uncap the fountain pen resting beside the devastating warrant, the confrontation reached its explosive zenith. William stopped pacing. He stepped directly in front of the king's desk, leaned forward, and allegedly slammed his hand flat against the 200-year-old mahogany table. The sound cracked through the hushed room, echoing off the ancestral portraits like a gunshot. The physical violence of the gesture shattered the remaining royal decorum. William looked his father dead in the eye, his voice dropping to a terrifying, absolute baseline, and delivered the ultimatum that would alter history. He told the monarch, with ice in his veins, that Harry was his son, but Charles was the king. And if the sovereign refused to protect the realm and sign the order, the Prince of Wales would bypass him and do it himself. It was an unprecedented threat of constitutional usurpation, delivered behind closed doors. William was implicitly threatening to leverage the Regency Act, subtly suggesting that a monarch unwilling to defend the crown estate from external plundering was mathematically unfit to govern it. The silence the following was absolute. The future of the British monarchy was hanging by a razor-thin thread, suspended between a father's breaking heart and a son's iron-fisted resolve. The ghosts of abdication seemed to swirl in the shadows of the study. The portraits of George V and Queen Elizabeth II staring down at a king trapped in a nightmare of his own bloodline's making. Realizing his father was still trapped in a paralyzing loop of grief and guilt, William played his final, devastating card. He pivoted from constitutional threats to emotional warfare, deploying the one memory that could shatter Charles's resistance. The prince's voice lost its echoing rage, transforming into a solemn, melancholic whisper that cut deeper than any shout. He reminded his father of the absolute chaos the family had endured in the darkest days of the 1990s. He invoked the crushing weight of the paparazzi, the endless leaks, the paranoia, and finally, he invoked Princess Diana. William stared relentlessly into his father's eyes and stated that his mother died believing the institution had left her exposed, vulnerable, and completely unprotected from the wolves at the door. He vowed, with a chilling, unshakable finality, that he would not stand by and allow his brother's relentless commercial greed and corporate machinations to inflict that exact same vulnerability onto his own wife, his own children, and the future of his family. The emotional trump card had been played, plunging the room into a dead, suffocating silence that lasted for 20 agonizing minutes, setting the stage for a legal maneuver that no one saw coming. For 20 agonizing minutes, the study remained dead silent. The king sat perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the towering oil portrait of his ancestors hanging above the mantelpiece, feeling the crushing weight of a millennium of blood and duty pressing down onto his shoulders. The invocation of Princess Diana was the ultimate psychological checkmate, the shattering blow that finally broke Charles's paralyzing indecision. But what happened next in that dimly lit room was a delayed revelation so heavily guarded that it has remained completely buried until this exact moment. King Charles did not sign the document. In a shocking, unprecedented delegation of royal prerogative that will be analysed and debated by constitutional historians for centuries to come, the monarch invoked a deeply obscure and legally perilous provision of the Councillors of State Act. He refused to be the direct executioner of his own son's legacy, unable to physically drag the pen across the parchment, but he permitted the execution to proceed. With a trembling hand, Charles pushed the red, leather-bound dossier across the expansive mahogany desk, effectively passing the burden of the crown and the pen to William. Without a single second of hesitation, the Prince of Wales took up the heavy Montblanc fountain pen. The metallic scratch of the gold nib against the thick, archival parchment echoed through the silent room like the dropping of a guillotine blade. William signed the Writ of Annexation. With that single, fluid, merciless stroke of black ink, Prince Harry was permanently and irrevocably erased from the Master Royal Archive. The legal finality of this. The document was absolute and staggering in its scope. The Duke of Sussex was no longer merely geographically separated from his family. He was officially exiled in the eyes of British and international law. The writ immediately extinguished his dormant sovereign immunities, annulled his ability to act as a proxy representative of the state, and violently severed the final, hidden financial umbilical cords tying him to the Duchy of Cornwall's shadow trusts. The stroke of William's pen triggered an automated legal cascade that radiated outward from London, signalling to the world's financial institutions that the Sussexes were no longer protected entities of the British state, but rogue operators entirely vulnerable to the crushing weight of international corporate law. The execution of Emergency Order 44 was instantaneous. Within seconds of the ink drying in London, digital shockwaves began hitting California. Bank accounts tied to the disputed Delaware shell companies were immediately frozen under international injunctions. The iron gates of Kensington Palace had closed, and the financial quarantine of Montecito was now fully operational. And how did the Sussex camp react to this devastating unannounced strike? They went completely dark. There were no hastily drafted PR statements from their usual network of friendly journalists. There were no veiled, passive-aggressive threats posted on Instagram. The normally relentless Sussex media machine was instantly paralyzed by the terrifying realization that the palace was no longer playing a defensive, reactive game of public relations. The monarchy had transitioned into a lethal, offensive posture. But beneath this sudden, deafening public silence, a frantic and highly clandestine operation was already underway on the California coast. Intelligence assets deeply embedded in Los Angeles have confirmed that within 48 hours of the writ of annexation being signed by Prince William, Harry's primary legal team quietly secured a heavily fortified, climate-controlled, underground vault in the financial district of Century City. Under the cover of darkness, utilizing unmarked transport vehicles, private security contractors were seen loading heavy, reinforced steel lockboxes out of the Montecito mansion and transporting them directly into this subterranean fortress. Our sources have confirmed exactly what those impenetrable boxes contain: Prince Harry's private, unredacted, handwritten journals. These are not the sanitized, ghost-written drafts of a published memoir tailored for public consumption. These are the raw, unedited diaries kept during his military deployments in Afghanistan, his darkest, most volatile days trapped within the institution, and the highly classified, closed-door meetings that took place immediately following the late Queen's death. This vault is the Sussexes' absolute nuclear deterrent. The establishment of the Century City Vault is a clear, undeniable declaration of mutually assured destruction. If the Crown attempts to fully liquidate the Sussexes' remaining commercial lifelines and enforce the trademark bans globally, Montecito is preparing to unleash a tsunami of state secrets that could permanently destabilize the monarchy's diplomatic standing on the world stage. The ink on William's warrant may be dry, but this shadow war is far from over. It has merely entered its most dangerous, covert phase. A massive, catastrophic storm is brewing over the Pacific, and Buckingham Palace is actively bracing for impact. We are currently tracking a breaking, highly sensitive development regarding Meghan Markle's sudden, unannounced trip on a private charter to Washington, D.C., where she was reportedly seen entering the heavily guarded headquarters of one of the most ruthless, politically connected crisis management law firms in the American capital. She is not seeking PR advice. She is assembling a wartime legal cabinet. The monarchy has drawn its definitive, uncompromising line in the sand, but Montecito is accelerating at breakneck speed to cross it. The contents of those Century City journals hold the terrifying power to bring the House of Windsor to its absolute knees. And the moment those unredacted pages begin to leak to the American press, the global media landscape will catch fire. If you want to know exactly what is hidden inside those steel lockboxes, and if you want to be the very first to uncover the Sussexes' final, devastating nuclear retaliation against King Charles and Prince William, you need to hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell right now. We are the only channel successfully penetrating the absolute blackout imposed by both Buckingham Palace and Montecito. Subscribe immediately, join the front line of this ongoing constitutional crisis, and we will see you in the next video.